There is a moment in every manipulated person's life when the guilt they carry becomes heavier than the truth they keep avoiding. It usually begins quietly, like a faint pressure behind the ribs, a soft ache you can't name at first. Something feels wrong, but you blame yourself before you ever question the person causing the damage. And that's exactly how manipulators want it. They don't break you with violence or chaos. They break you with guilt, slowly, quietly, until you confuse emotional pain with responsibility, and their mistreatment becomes something you believe you deserve. In a small American apartment, somewhere between the static hum of an old refrigerator and the dim orange glow leaking through half-closed blinds, a woman sits on the edge of her bed. Her name doesn't matter, because her story could be anyone's. She's staring at her phone, the screen illuminating her face in pale blue light. Her breath is shaky, her shoulders tense, her thumb hovering over an apology she didn't even need to write. She rereads their last message. It's short, cold, sharp enough to puncture her. "I guess you never care until it's too late." The words hit her like a quiet slap. Her heart drops. She whispers, "I didn't do anything, did I?" But she sends the apology anyway. This small, unnecessary apology is the opening act of psychological control. It's the moment a manipulator creates guilt where none existed. They know exactly how to twist silence, tone, timing, and emotional withdrawal into a weapon. They know guilt is a leash, soft enough to look harmless but strong enough to drag someone back every time they try to breathe freely. And she doesn't even notice it happening. She thinks she's being kind, being understanding, being the bigger person. She doesn't see that she is being conditioned. Down the hall, the air feels colder. The living room is dark except for a soft streetlight flickering outside. She walks slowly, almost like she's drifting, gripping the phone as if it's the only thing holding her together. She checks again. No reply, no read receipt, just emptiness, and somehow she still blames herself. Maybe she said something wrong. Maybe she forgot something. Maybe she wasn't enough today. This is how mental manipulation works. It does not need to shout. It just needs you to question yourself more than you question the person hurting you. Hours pass. She sits on the couch, tucking her knees into her chest, running through memories, analyzing every detail, every breath, every word she said. She doesn't realize she's been trained to do this. Manipulators depend on emotional doubt. They plant it like a seed. They water it with subtle comments, strategic silence, emotional distance, small punishments disguised as "I just need space." But the space isn't real. It's a trap built to make you chase them, apologize to them, prove yourself to them. And she does exactly that. She sends another message, softer this time, almost like a confession. "If I hurt you, I'm sorry. Please just talk to me." She doesn't deserve this guilt. But guilt is the perfect tool for toxic people. It makes the victim feel responsible for the manipulator's moods, choices, insecurities, and emotional explosions. It makes the victim feel like they're always one mistake away from losing the relationship. It makes them afraid to speak up, afraid to set boundaries, afraid to disappoint someone who has no problem disappointing them daily. Guilt becomes the puppet strings of emotional control. In the dim apartment, she finally puts her phone down and stands in front of the window. Her reflection looks unfamiliar, tired eyes, shaking breath. A woman who used to be confident but now feels like she's shrinking. She presses her forehead to the cold glass. She thinks about how things used to be: kind words, warmth, promises, affection. She doesn't know that those early moments weren't love. They were the foundation of a psychological bond. Manipulators don't connect with you. They attach to your empathy, your kindness, your willingness to understand. They choose people who are emotionally generous, not emotionally weak. They need someone who will tolerate the hurt long enough for them to stay in control. She looks out at the empty street, cars passing occasionally, headlights smearing across wet pavement. The silence is suffocating. She doesn't know that this silence is intentional. Manipulators often use emotional withdrawal as punishment. They vanish, they go cold. They turn distant not because they are hurt, but because they know you will fill the silence with apologies. They know you'll blame yourself. They know guilt works better than anger. She whispers again, this time quietly, "Why do I always feel like the bad guy?" That single question is the doorway into the truth she hasn't reached yet. She feels guilty because someone wants her to feel guilty. She feels responsible because someone benefits from her responsibility. She feels broken because someone keeps breaking her just slowly enough that she never realizes it's happening. And that is where Chapter 1 ends on the quiet moment, before she wakes up to the reality of psychological abuse. The guilt isn't hers, the pain isn't hers, the responsibility isn't hers. But she won't understand that until she sees how manipulators create guilt with precision, patience, and psychological strategy. The night grows longer, and the silence stretches until it becomes something physical, something that wraps around her chest like a tightening band. She lies on the couch, curled into the corner, watching the shadows on the ceiling shift each time a car passes outside. Her phone is still in her hand. She doesn't know why she keeps checking it. Habit is only part of it. The deeper truth is that she's been conditioned to wait for his reactions the way someone waits for oxygen. Not because she wants to, but because emotional dependence sneaks in quietly. Guilt builds the walls. Silence locks the doors, and the manipulator becomes the only one with the key. She thinks about the last argument, or what she thought was an argument. In reality, it wasn't an argument at all, just a moment where she tried to express how she felt. She said something simple, something honest. "I felt ignored today, it hurt," and he spun it into something else. He sighed, he turned away, he made a small, frustrated noise, as if she had burdened him with something unforgivable. Then he said the line that always cuts her deepest, "I can't do this with you right now, you always make things worse," and he walked out. That line is a classic manipulation technique, turning accountability into an attack, transforming her feelings into evidence that she's difficult, dramatic, or unreasonable. This is how toxic people rewrite reality. They make normal emotions seem like emotional crimes, and the moment she starts feeling guilty for simply existing, the control becomes effortless. She remembers how she chased after him, apologized even though she did nothing wrong. She remembers his cold shoulder, his slow, annoyed exhale, as if he were raising a child instead of standing beside a partner. She remembers feeling small. That feeling doesn't fade quickly. It lingers. It changes how you speak, how you think, how you breathe. It becomes a filter through which you view yourself. Every mistake feels bigger. Every emotion feels dangerous. Every need feels like something you should hide. She walks to the bathroom and stares at her reflection. The soft light above the mirror flickers slightly, casting a faint tremble across her face. She touches her cheek, as if trying to remind herself she's real. Her expression looks unfamiliar again, like someone drained the color from her. She whispers, "Why do I always end up like this?" But it isn't her. She isn't the problem. The problem is the carefully crafted emotional architecture built around her, brick by brick, guilt by guilt. Manipulators don't need physical force. They don't need threats. They just need predictable vulnerabilities, empathy, fear of conflict, desire to fix things, hope that people can change. They detect these weaknesses like sharks sense blood. They don't choose partners. They choose targets. And once they find someone who cares deeply, they build a psychological web that turns compassion into a trap. She walks back into the living room and sits on the floor, back against the couch. The carpet feels cold beneath her legs, grounding in a strange way. She closes her eyes, trying to breathe, trying to slow the storm inside her. But then the phone buzzes. Her eyes snap open, her heart jumps. Relief hits her like a soft wave, too fast, too intense. This tiny moment of relief is another sign of emotional conditioning. When someone's attention becomes a reward, it means their absence has become punishment. She grabs the phone quickly. The message isn't kind, it isn't warm, it isn't even neutral. It simply says, "I can't believe how selfish you've been today." Her stomach drops. Her throat tightens. She rereads the text over and over until the words blur. She tries to understand how she was selfish. She replays the entire evening. She thinks about everything she said, everything she didn't say, every expression on her face. She can't find anything, but that doesn't matter. Manipulators don't need a reason. They just need a moment. She types a reply, but her fingers shake. "I'm sorry," she writes again. 3 words she's repeated so many times they've lost all meaning. She sends it before she can think. She hates it. She hates how automatic it's become. She hates how her body reacts before her brain understands. But that's the nature of psychological conditioning. Guilt becomes instinct, not reasoning. She apologizes to keep the peace, not because she did anything wrong. He doesn't respond immediately. He lets the silence stretch. This delay is intentional, a tactic to heighten her anxiety, to make her feel suspended between fear and hope. Her chest tightens as minutes feel like hours. She stares at the phone, waiting for the next blow. Emotional manipulation functions like a slot machine. You never know when the response will come, whether it will be cold, cruel, warm, or dismissive. And that unpredictability is part of the trap. It's the same pattern used in trauma bonds. The brain becomes addicted to the cycle of fear and relief. Finally, another message arrives. "You always ruin everything. I can't trust you with anything." She feels her heart crumble, but she still whispers, "I'm sorry," even though he can't hear her. She pulls her knees to her chest again, burying her face in her hands. Tears slip between her fingers. She doesn't even cry loudly anymore. She learned to cry quietly because loud crying once made him accuse her of emotional manipulation. She doesn't notice the psychological reversal. She doesn't see that he's doing to her what he accuses her of. Manipulators project their own behavior onto their victims until the victim loses faith in their own perception. She used to be confident. She used to stand tall. Now she questions her memory, her judgment, her instincts. She wonders if maybe he's right. Maybe she is selfish. Maybe she is dramatic. Maybe she is the problem. She doesn't know the truth yet. The truth that she is living inside a crafted emotional narrative designed to keep her insecure, apologetic, and dependent. Manipulators operate like directors of a psychological film, controlling scenes, reactions, pacing, and emotional atmosphere. They script the story so subtly that the victim believes it's their own fault, and she has accepted her role without realizing she was manipulated into it. She stares out the window again. The night looks cold, empty, but somewhere deep inside her a small thought flickers, a whisper of doubt. Not about herself this time, but about him. She wonders, for the first time in months, why do I feel guilty for everything? She doesn't know it yet, but this single thought is the first crack in the system, the first slip in the mask. The first moment the emotional fog begins to thin. She wipes her tears with the sleeve of her sweater. She breathes slowly, but the guilt still churns in her stomach like a familiar storm. She doesn't know how to stop it. She doesn't know how to break the loop, not yet, but she's starting to see it. And that awareness, even in its earliest form, is the beginning of freedom. Morning arrives slowly, the kind of slow that makes the world feel heavier than it should. Pale light slips through the blinds, turning the room a muted gray. She wakes on the couch with her phone still in her hand, her fingers curled around it like a lifeline. Her eyes burn from crying, and her throat feels tight, as if the emotions from the night before never truly left her body. She sits up slowly, rubbing her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. But the first thing she checks is the phone. This reflex isn't love. It's fear wrapped in routine. There's no new message. No apology, no clarity, just silence, and the silence hurts more in daylight, because daylight removes the excuses she gave him during the night. In the darkness, everything feels dramatic, but in the morning, everything should feel clearer. Yet somehow, the guilt feels even heavier. She tries to tell herself he's just tired, or stressed, or overwhelmed, She tries to rationalize his cruelty by shrinking her own pain. This is what manipulation does. It teaches you to interpret disrespect as emotional difficulty and abuse as a temporary mood. She goes to the kitchen, pours water into a glass, and stares blankly at the sink. Her hands feel shaky. Her thoughts feel unstable. She tries to remember who she used to be before the guilt took over. She can faintly recall laughter that came easily, the way she used to talk without rehearsing, the confidence she carried like a natural part of her skin. Now she thinks before every sentence, measuring each word like a potential mine. She filters her emotions through self-blame, carefully edited before they reach him, if they reach him at all. This isn't love, it's survival. She sits at the small kitchen table, her fingers tracing circles on the wood. Her mind replays last night, the messages, the silence, the apology she sent that wasn't even hers to give. Then, unexpectedly, a quiet voice inside her says, "If someone loved you, they wouldn't make you afraid to speak." That thought lands heavily. It feels new, unfamiliar, almost rebellious. But it doesn't go away. It lingers. Manipulation doesn't disappear all at once. The guilt doesn't evaporate, but awareness begins like this, a small spark of clarity, glowing just enough to make the darkness look suspicious. She starts to question things she never questioned before. Why does she always apologize first? Why does he never take responsibility? Why does every conversation end with her feeling like the villain? These aren't random patterns. They're psychological strategies. Guilt is the currency of control, and he has been spending it freely on her. The more she sits with these thoughts, the heavier her chest feels. It's not the same guilt as before. It's a different kind of weight, truth trying to rise. She picks up her phone again, scrolling through old conversations, reading messages that once confused her but now look clearer. She sees where he twisted her words. She sees how he used silence as punishment. She sees moments she apologized simply for feeling. She sees patterns she once missed completely. And for the first time, a quiet sadness replaces the guilt. The sadness that comes when you finally recognize emotional abuse for what it is. She walks to the window and pulls the blinds up. Light floods the room, revealing dust in the air, faint scratches on the table, the subtle disarray of a life lived in emotional turbulence. She watches the street below, a dog pulling its owner, a jogger passing by, a couple laughing at something small. The world looks normal, calm, stable. Her world has been anything but. Her phone buzzes suddenly, her breath catches. Her stomach tightens, she looks at the screen. His name appears. The message is long, full of subtle accusations, disguised concern, and emotional guilt. Traps, I don't know what you expected from last night. You always take things the wrong way. You made me feel like the bad guy. I just need you to understand how much you hurt me. She reads it twice, then again. And something inside her shifts. The words no longer feel like truth. They feel like strategy. She sees the framing, the twisting, the way he centers himself while erasing her pain. She feels her heartbeat change, not racing in fear this time, but slowing in clarity. She whispers, "This isn't me. This isn't love. This is control." She doesn't reply. Not immediately. She just holds the phone loosely, breathing through the conflict inside her. Part of her still wants to apologize, because the conditioning is deep, and guilt is a stubborn ghost. But another part of her, a part she thought she lost, starts to stand up inside her. That part feels steady, quiet, real. She leans against the window frame, watching the morning unfold, and she realizes she hasn't felt this kind of silence in a long time, the kind of silence that belongs to her, not him. She thinks about everything she tolerated, everything she forgave, everything she blamed herself for. She thinks about the countless nights she cried alone, while he punished her for emotions he caused. She thinks about how small she became just to keep the peace. And then she imagines, for a moment, a life without guilt. A life without walking on emotional glass. A life where she can breathe without wondering who she's disappointing. That image feels fragile, but beautiful. She places the phone face down on the counter, not in anger, just in tension. She steps back, exhales, and lets her shoulders fall naturally for the first time in months. She isn't healed yet. She isn't free yet, but she is awake now, and waking up is the hardest part. Awareness doesn't erase the manipulation, but it changes how it affects you. When you see the strings, they lose their power. She sits on the couch again, but this time her posture is different. She's not curled in fear. She's sitting upright, hands resting calmly on her legs. Her mind feels clearer than the night before. She thinks about boundaries, not the kind she tried to set with him, because those never survived, but the kind she needs to set with herself. The boundary between responsibility and guilt, the boundary between love and emotional labor, the boundary between empathy and self-betrayal. She whispers, "I deserve better than this." The room is quiet, but the words feel loud. Her phone buzzes again. She doesn't flinch this time. She doesn't reach for it. She lets the vibration fade. She lets the message sit unread. This tiny moment, this act of not responding, is her first step toward reclaiming her life. Her heart still aches, but it aches with truth now, not confusion. Outside, a soft breeze moves the trees. Sunlight spills onto her floor like a small blessing. She closes her eyes and breathes deeply, letting the air fill her lungs, letting the guilt loosen its grip. She isn't healed yet, but she has finally stopped apologizing for things she never did, and that shift is the beginning of freedom. In this moment, she understands something important. Manipulators don't fear losing control. They fear you realizing you were never the problem. She opens her eyes slowly, and for the first time in a long time, her expression doesn't look lost. It looks alive. She stands, walks to the window again, and lets the light touch her face. She doesn't know what comes next, but she knows one thing with absolute certainty. The guilt she carried was never hers. And now that she sees the truth, she will never carry it again.